What's going on, everybody? Happy Monday. The market is closed today. Bitcoin recently broke all-time highs. However, now we're seeing a little bit of a cool down. Could this be a buy the rumor, sell the news type of event? Could this simply be some profit taking before we head higher? I think it's a little bit of both. One thing that might be affecting Bitcoin's price is the fact that Donald Trump didn't talk about Bitcoin in his inauguration speech. And although he didn't necessarily mention Bitcoin, betting odds on Polymarket have a strategic Bitcoin reserve being created within the first 100 days as a 45% likelihood, from a high of 60% or more chance than not just earlier in the day. In my opinion, you don't have to worry about Bitcoin becoming a strategic national reserve at all. Whether it does or does not happen is beyond our control. And rather than freaking out on the day-to-day, what's Bitcoin doing today, tomorrow, the next day, the best thing, in my opinion, you can do is simply follow the cycle. Everything in between is just noise. Now check this out. Just a few days before Gary Gensler's final day as SEC chair, we have seen, and I quote, a flood of cryptocurrency ETF filings. We of course have ProShares that filed for a Solana futures ETF, following a similar filing from Volatility Shares back in December. We also have CoinShares, which was formerly Valkyrie Funds, submitting a proposal for a CoinShares digital ETF, while ProShares submitted filings for additional leveraged, inverse, and futures ETFs tied to XRP. Other firms have also filed proposals, and as Eric Balchunas notes, Gensler wasn't even out of the building for 5 minutes. The ETF industry unloaded a massive crypto filing frenzy. We know Wall Street has adopted Bitcoin. We know Bitcoin is not going away. Whether it is or isn't part of a strategic national reserve doesn't change the scope of things on the grand scale. And if you do believe Bitcoin will someday be adopted by nations, by states, it already is happening. But if you believe this is going to accelerate, is going to amplify in magnitude, the longer they take, the better, right? Now, we do have some interesting MicroStrategy news, and this is a first. After 10 consecutive purchases, they paused. And interestingly, maybe this is a hint, or maybe this is just something entirely different, but Michael Saylor himself said things will be different tomorrow. Is he mentioning the new inauguration, or is he talking about he's not going to buy Bitcoin? We know that tomorrow MicroStrategy shareholders will vote on a proposal increasing their shares from 330 million to 10.3 billion. Basically an increase of 10 billion shares. And while dilution is normally always seen as a negative, of course, if you're a shareholder, it means there's going to be more shares. It means the value of your shares should be less, right? This doesn't change that we have some very bullish analysts. We have 2 5-star analysts with an over $550 target. In my opinion, MSTR will keep rallying if Bitcoin keeps rallying. The moment the cycle ends is the moment you want to be out of MicroStrategy. Just like the Bitcoin miners, MicroStrategy, the altcoins, you do not want to hold them during crypto winter. You want to scale out while times are good and scale back in when things are bad. We want to sell into strength, whether that's 3 months from now, 6 months from now, because when things start turning around, when things start pulling back, things can quickly go from being euphoric and being FOMO induced, people wanting to pile in, whether you're talking about alts, Bitcoin, Bitcoin miners, MicroStrategy. It can go from everyone being bullish to everyone being in a serious panic at the flip of a switch, essentially. Now, looking at MicroStrategy on the chart, you can see that we did fill the gap. That was a great time to add, a great time to accumulate some MicroStrategy if you're bullish. And let me show you on, rather than the weekly, on the daily, you can see this clear break of a descending resistance we were in. We saw a false breakout here. We didn't get a candle to close above. We got rejected, and then we finally broke out. MicroStrategy is back over the 50 MA, similarly to Bitcoin. This could be the beginning of our new direction. Right now we're in an ascending channel. One thing I would like to see is a break of this previous high. If Bitcoin doesn't keep moving and gets rejected here, I would expect MicroStrategy to pull back as well, fill this gap potentially that we just opened in the high threes, potentially opening up another dip by opportunity. As long as Bitcoin's in a bull market, as long as the cycle's in play, MicroStrategy will do well. Now, I do want to pull up Bitcoin. It too broke its downtrend, and we did take out the all-time high. And you can see where the 50 MA is concerned, this is the longest time we have been above it since back in late December. Now, keep in mind, guys, we do have the Fed meeting coming up. We do have PCE coming up. There is going to be some uncertainty. Don't let that distract you from the big picture. Global M2 is set to expand. Bitcoin follows this 85% of the time. We're still in the prime time of the 4-year cycle. And while I did show you guys this the other day, let me just reiterate. The spot Bitcoin ETFs have been a massive win, a massive positive for Bitcoin. And 2025 could easily surpass 2024 with more support from RIA, advisors, wirehouses, and entities seeing how good the Bitcoin ETFs did in 2024. They're going to want a piece of it. They're going to want a piece of those returns. Now, whether we get a Bitcoin strategic reserve by the end of this cycle, by the time things are over, That's up for debate. This isn't necessarily something that will just happen in one day. And none of us know truly what the future holds. Whether or not Bitcoin is adopted as a strategic reserve asset, Bitcoin will do what it always does, and that is appreciate in price over the long term. This is definitely going to be an interesting week for Bitcoin. What do you guys think? Do you think we're going to dump from here? Do you think we're going to start popping off from here? We could see some rough days heading up to the Fed meeting. In the end, we are still in a rate cutting cycle. All we need is inflation to continue cooling, or their numbers to continue to show that it's cooling. And the market again will be in a state of euphoria when it sees that more than 2 rate cuts are on the table. But thanks as always for watching, guys. How are you feeling today? How do you feel the week's gonna go? Do you miss Bitcoin under 100K? In my opinion, this is still the time to take advantage. But remember, we are getting later and later into the cycle. If you follow Bitcoin's 4-year cycle, the time to trim will probably be somewhere around 6 to 9 months. If you believe in Bitcoin on the long term and you don't worry about the year-to-year price moves, then continue to DCA and hold. You can never go wrong there. Thanks as always for watching, guys, and I'll see you tomorrow.